Shalom and welcome to another edition of Parsha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Mallam in Highland Park, New Jersey, at the Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation Anshe Emena. Joining me, my good friends Rabbi Barry Chesler, Solomon Schechter, Day School of Long Island, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky, Anshe Chesed in New York City. We've been starting this every week with a kind of sphira. And last week I mentioned that there is this website, Sphira 10:7. So I'll read the sphira today for the hostages. Hayom shesh me'ot v'tisha yom. 609 days. Shehem shana echat. Shiva chodashim. V'shloshim ve'echat yamim b'choshech. 1 year, 7 months, 31 days in darkness. May it be God's will that our loved ones will be protected and they will be saved from those who want to do evil and harm to them, and let them be returned to their homes in peace and in health. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Man.
We are reading Parshat Naso, but before we start about it, I just want to we have to spend a moment talking about the incident in Boulder, Colorado, and the incident in Boulder, Colorado is has many kind of ripples to it. The globalized the Intifada has been globalized. Here's another piece of evidence of that, but it's about the way that we understand security and we understand our lives, and especially when it comes to these kinds of demonstrations. Jeremy, I want to just ask you. You're in New York City. There is a regular walk similar to the one in Boulder. First of all, for people who are watching this, it's usually Sunday mornings, correct?
Correct.
I
In
think it's at
Central Park,
11
yeah.
o'clock. They meet at a certain place in Central
Central Park,
Park. You
yeah.
can go to the forum. There's information about this.
Yep.
Um, so you've been on a couple of those. What is it like? What is it?
You know, I have been to a few, but I'm not a regular attender. We
Sure.
often have a lot going on Sunday mornings in the shul, so it's not that easy for me. But plenty of our members are uh, attenders without fail, and they meet at 90th and Central Park West, so it's really just around the corner from me here. It's often pretty enthusiastic. There's a Bebas family member who lives in Westchester who spoke on a number of occasions, and I had a member whose cousin was Carmel Gott, who was killed that day with Hirsch, and he's spoken on a number of occasions. And so you get some feeling of the family's desperation, and it's a great, I've never spoken there, but other rabbis have, and there's I actually can think of other times that hostage parents, visiting the United States, have spoken, and it's like, a very intense Jewish communal feeling. You know, I don't know anything about Boulder, Colorado. The Upper West Side of Manhattan is an intensely Jewish place. Okay, so it does not feel vulnerable at all. There are cops there, but it'll be interesting. Occasionally bikers, riding the drive in Central Park, which passed right by, you'll occasionally hear a Free Palestine or something like that. But it's a good place where the participants feel supported and supportive, and yeah, it's a warm experience. I think I'm going to try and go this week
Sure.
because for obvious reasons. I mean, it's challenging in New York. I don't really feel that we in the Upper West Side of New York are going to start feeling vulnerable in that way. But you want to say that when there's been this terrible act of violence, we're still going to do this. We're still going to keep raising our voices and still be with people.
In general, when things like this happen, there's this kind of ripple that goes through the whole Jewish communal structure, all about security, how to keep ourselves secure. Do we have enough security? And of course, there's no limit to how secure you can do. I mean, synagogues in Manhattan have, everything from airline security protocols to, lots of guards. We have a guard now since Pittsburgh. We don't, we're nowhere near airline security. People don't come in. I mean, there are all sorts of conversations that take place in the community about security, about what level of should people come in, should there be people concealed weapons, etc. I mean, these are conversations that happen, and of course, security is on the physical side. What kinds of common sense things you can do to make sure that you know who's coming in and out of your building, and that all of the entrances, everything is secure, and it's also psychological. There's no question about that. And I think that's probably a good segue to the Parsha. There's lots of things that shape our self-image and our self-sense of security in the Parsha. Um, and for that, I think we could turn immediately to, well, let's turn to the priestly blessing, because the priestly blessing has within it this statement at the beginning. The priestly blessing, of course, we have to just contextualize this for a second. In our parsha, which is an amazing parsha, by the way,
In case
lots
you
of
didn't know.
it, in case you didn't know, lots of interesting details in the amazing parsha, including just a kind of postscript about the Levitical families, which we may want to highlight. Also, these in unusual circumstances: a sota, the suspected adulteress; the nazir, the person who wants to dedicate himself like a kohen, take upon a vow for service. And then at the end of the parsha, we have the whole parade of the uh, prince offerings, the offerings of all the tribal princes, which takes up a good chunk of the Torah reading. It's a long part of the Torah reading. We've talked about it in the past and talked about the fact that this is kind of the rhapsody, the song of of the desert, basically. But smack in the middle of this is the priestly blessing, and that actually raises a lot of editorial questions as to, like, why was the book edited this way? Why was the blessing placed here? I'm not sure I can point to a satisfactory answer for that question. But what I do want to point to, or just want to kind of open up for our conversation, is what does this mean in light of the fact that we talked about security? So the first one says, it says, the blessing, it says, chapter 6, verse 22, Vaydaber Adonai Moshe lemor, God speaks to Moses, saying, Daber el Aaron, speak to Aaron, ve'el banav, and his sons, lemor, saying, Ko tevarchu et bnei Yisrael amor lem. This is how you shall bless them. So it's like the formula that you're going to use for blessing the people. This is the formula. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka, yisad Adonai panav elecha v'yisem lecha shalom. May God bless you and keep you. May God shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. May God lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. And then it says, V'samot shmi al bnei Yisrael v'ani avarchem, and you shall place my name on the children of Israel, and I will bless them. We'll talk about that in a second, okay? But I want to, having just spoken about security, Yivarechecha Adonai v'shmerecha, may God bless you and guard you. So the reaction here is, it's one thing to be blessed, it's another thing to be protected. Or is protection part of being blessed? Or what does it mean to be blessed? Or just come in on any of these questions anywhere you want. And then I have my proposition of a subversive reading, which we'll talk about in a second. But how do you react to the priestly blessing? What role does it play in your life? Wherever you want to go in on the priestly blessing, go for it. I'll start with you, Rabbi Barry Chesler.
Oh, well, thank you. So, what's striking about the first two of the blessings, the Yevarecha Chadin and V'yishmerecha, Yoredana Panav Elecha V'chuneka, is that we have in each pasuk two clauses that are separated by a vav, which is commonly translated as and, but actually has the full range of conjunctions that could give it meaning. So it could be that God should bless us so that he might guard us. That in order to be properly guarded requires the blessing from God. As we were talking before the show, God has any number of different ways of interacting with the community Israel in the Torah and with individuals, and they're not always benign. And here, what is benign, it seems to me, is the blessing element, that the blessing is a force for good. But again, when we were talking about this earlier, what struck me is that the word bracha in the Bible sometimes means klala, curse, because it's euphemistic language. And in a few places, the word blessing appears when curse is meant, which might lend support to your reading, which you're going to explain in
I'll
just a
explain. I
minute.
don't. Yeah, I wouldn't go there yet. Okay, but Jeremy, where does this blessing, where did this the priestly blessing land? I mean, as a Kohen, we've talked about that in the past. Just
Yeah.
you know, what what do as you interpret it like this minute, what is going? If I were to ask you, what does it mean to you, or how would you interpret this, or what explanation would you give to this?
Well, I wonder if each of those second clauses is a definer of the first. May God, it could be God bless you with the good stuff and keep you from the bad stuff. It could be God shine the face upon you, A, and then B, show you grace. Or it could be may God bless you by keeping you, and may God shine the face upon you and thereby show you grace. Maybe that's kind of one thing. Yisad Adonai panav elecha ve'asem lecha shalom, and God raise his face to you, or maybe idiomatically smile upon you, and thereby grant you peace. That could be, each of those things could be one thing. And a person would feel protection, and a person would feel grace, and a person would feel shalva, they would feel tranquility and peacefulness and well-being. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. But I think we're also going to talk. I mean, we can do this now, we can do this later, but I think we also want to talk about the dynamics of whose blessing is it the people, who is the blesser, or is God the blesser? And that's another really interesting part of this discussion.
So I think also, I mean, there are lots of levels of interpretation here. I I I'm always inclined when reading the priestly blessing to think of it just as a kind of very, very small example of biblical poetry. There are these parallelistic aspects to this, blessing and keeping. So in parallelism, the second clause kind of operates as an emphasis to the first clause, or a kind of augmentation to the first clause. Blessing is one thing, but being protected is the ultimate. Having God's light upon you is one thing, and God being gracious to you augments God's light being onto you. Having God's face be upon you is, raises the poetic tension, and peace kind of brings it down. And so there is operating in this, very classic biblical poetic principles, or just, the frame of biblical poetry, and the fact that the words are 3, 5, and 7. I mean, with all of that, makes it a very beautiful, elegant text. And I think we've talked about it in the past. I you know we just need to go back to basics, though, which is, what does it mean to bless? And here offer the kind of definition, which is, I am summoning the power, the generative power of God, and I want to summon that and give it to you. I want to kind of be the collector of all of that power and funnel it to you. And at least that's the image I have in my mind, which is that I am this kind of radio antenna, this dish, right? And I'm collecting all of the generative energy of the universe, which is God, and I am, reflecting it, and I happen to have a person in front of me, and I'm channeling it to that person, and I am thereby an agent for that person, which places me, I'm not a Cohen, but I am a parent, so that this is part of the parental blessings. It puts, it can put us sometimes in this very beautiful and sometimes intimate and sometimes even awkward, position. And one of our conversations is about the role of being the transmitter of blessing. That does place a certain amount of responsibility on us. I think we all have varying degrees of comfort with that role. I'm going to turn to you, Jeremy, because you're the Kohen, and you have to have this natural DNA disposition to doing that. And what is your relationship? I mean, are you comfortable with being the channel, or in fact, maybe you have a different interpretation of what it means to bless?
Channel is exactly, I think, the way I feel about it, at least. You invoke this flow, this emanation, or this beneficence. I think with beneficence, you give beneficence. I always think about, especially this is many times, but especially when times have been hard in Israel, or I was in Israel immediately after the war started, and to imagine those people in the shul and their families. And when you do it, you kind of turn side to side. So you make sure your your hand position, which is conceived of as kind of a prism of God looking through the prism of your generosity and love and beneficence to the people. You want to make sure that everybody in that room gets that vantage point. It gets a little bit, God will look at them through your hands and through your hearts. And the feeling that I have is that I like that radio antenna image. By dint of my birth or the tradition around my birth, and we all have to, we might wonder about the factual character, but the halachic character is set that this is my particular responsibility and gift to be able to send that blessing around. One of the word bracha, baruch, very possibly has to do with the word ni, berech, and that the blessed person is the one who, to whom other people bow the knee. But in the mystical traditions, a different etymology, playful etymology, it's not the real source of the word, but is the word brecha, a pool. And the image is sometimes floated that first of all, that God is a pool of blessing or a fountain of blessing, but you also have sometimes an image that like the person who went to the spring and opened up the spring so that it would flow into a pool, um, so you can sort of trigger the fountain from the pool. That's what it is to share blessing. So I will sometimes think about these people in the room, their being at risk. Their children might be in the army. I'll think about this kind of cosmic pool of blessing and that I can dig into the spring and, open it up a little bit.
So I wonder if your playful interpretation might not have an earlier source in Masachet Kiddushin, where there's a braita of the father's responsibilities to the child, and the last one on the list in the braita is to teach the child how to swim. And it could be that the reason for that is so that the child will one day become a source of blessing. And that would fit in very nicely with the mystical tradition. But part of the discussion caused me to think about the, I guess, the translation in the original Siddur Sim Shalom, which was replaced the much lamented Silverman of my youth. And there, Baruch was translated as praised almost every single time, because who are we as human beings to bless God, who is the source of blessing? All we could do is praise him. And it leads me to think that, there are different roles that people have. And here in the priestly blessing, I think it's pretty clear that the priest is the agent of God. And the other common time for the priestly blessing to be recited is in the home on Friday night when parents bless their children. And I'm not so sure that there the parent is the agent of God, or is perhaps more so than in the priestly blessing, a bestower of blessing on one's children as well.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. It is a remarkable moment to do that we've all experienced that in one way or another, and it 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 has this kind of aura of sacredness, that it's the moment that you are kind of conveying this. As I said, it's a moment of intimacy, a moment of closeness, and it's a moment where it's very charged. Therefore, it can make us feel uncomfortable, or it can make us, those of us who may not, have a certain aptitude towards it, or sometimes, we just kind of gently kind of skirt over it and move to other places in that Friday evening. I mean, it emerged as custom in the Friday night, in the Seder Leil Shabbat, I suppose, Shalom Aleichem, songs to the various people. There's a Eshet Chayil, there's a reciprocal in modern, in an evolving tradition, to one's partner. And blessings of the children before Kiddush and the Motzi, and these are moments that are nuclear moments. That is for a nuclear family, but also beyond that, they're moments of intimacy where if the guests are present and they're not with their own family, it can be a little awkward for them. Tend to when we have Shabbos dinners at the shul, and we have this moment, and not everyone's there with family, not everyone is there with children. I will take the moment and say, everybody, let's take this moment just to offer a bracha to just welcome the people that are at the table with you. Just have a moment where you can wish them something good, um, without necessarily putting your hands on them. I think people would feel very awkward about that. Not necessarily, I don't know, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the that feeling of, like I said, the word I used before, beneficence. I mean, that's what, any gift that you give. This is from our late lamented friend and teacher, Rabbi Yochanan Mufs, who was a member of my shul, wrote in a very influential essay about love and joy, and the joy in the uh, in the ancient world. It means, you give this gift with your heart, and it's accepted from the heart, and it's just, I wish, Lamana chai v're'ai adabra na shalom bach, למען החי ורעי, למען בית אדוני אלוהינו אבק שטוב לך. For the sake of my comrades, I wish you peace. For the sake of the temple, I wish the best for you. And digging into your own heart, it's not at all hard with your children and your spouse, but even with other people. And so that's the Birkat HaKohanim experience, is digging into my heart. Avak shatov lach. I really do I want you to succeed. I want you to do well. And the more you're in, you're in a community. You might not like everybody, but you have to find a way to love everybody, even people you don't like. And I totally feel, as you pointed out before, this passage um, begins with, so shall you say to the children of Aaron, and here's how they should bless the people, and it closes off with, and they will place my name on the people, and I will bless them. So again, speaking of the concept that we are those who give blessings, and that could be liturgical, like Kohanim in a traditional synagogue, or it can be informal, like you just described in a dinner, or familial. It is to say with just great affirmation, I wish the best for you. And I really hope that, being religious teaches us to have that generosity, and not be so, and to counteract our tendency towards selfishness, and to access and cultivate our sense for generosity.
so I do want to talk about this. I don't want to know. I don't want to say it's a subversive reading, but is it possible that to be blessed by God may be something dangerous? That is to say, you could have so much blessing, you need to be actually protected from God. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you, but
But
if you get too much blessing,
Well,
you need to be
eh,
protected from it. May God shine His light upon you. And if there's too much on you, you need to have that grace. If there's, God's face is on you. You need to have shalom. Where would you react to that?
The
So
but,
I
as Barry, as
find
Barry,
it works better with the second and third blessing than I think it does with the
The
first one.
first one.
I think it's hard to, at least for me, to construe bracha with any kind of negative valence to it. Um, but we know that God's face has two sides to it, metaphorically speaking, and one can see too much of God. There's a famous story about the rabbis that go to Pardes in the Talmud, and one sees too much and goes blind. Um, but I'd like to come back to the first blessing because God's blessing, I think, has to be a source of bounty and not a source of negativity. I
Terror.
don't I don't think there could be too much blessing. There could be too much of other aspects of God, but I have a hard time getting unless perhaps you could spell it out a little
Well,
bit.
here's the only way I would spell it out, which is that when things are too good and things are too blessed, there is a sense that I need to be protected. And here it may not be subversive to say this, which is I don't want this to end, and I don't want I'm feeling vulnerable that my life is blessed, and I'm very thankful for that, and I know all too well that the rug could be pulled out from underneath me, and I want to be protected from that. So I'm aware in the moment of being of receiving God's blessing, I am aware, I'm intensely aware that this could be removed from me in a split second, Keharifian. And that
So,
that
okay.
terrifies me in
we
some
had
way.
So I want to suggest a slightly different reading then,
okay.
because I think we have to go now to the end where it says that once the priest put God's name on Bnei Israel, God can bless the people. And the question that one might ask is, why did the priest have to bless God if God is going to bless the people? Or why do the priests have to bless the people
People.
before God blesses the people? And I think that there's a profound religious insight here that runs through a good part of Jewish tradition is that we are partners with God. That God, especially in the post-destruction world, doesn't take the first step without some prompting from the people. That
Interesting.
we have to draw God into the world. So if the priests do not bless the people, then God will not bless them either.
Interesting. Jeremy, you want
You know,
to say?
I was going to mention that we recently had it was on Shavuot night. We had an interfaith program here with a Muslim group and a nearby Christian church, and we were talking about different traditions about healing, and I presented some material on Bikur Cholim, visiting the sick, and the imam um, related that. So somebody asked a question about uh, the person who I was a little surprised that he knew the story, but he did know the story very nicely, about Rabbi Yehuda Nasi dying in great pain, and his maids and the students are praying over him so that the Malach HaMavet can't get to him, and then the maidservant of Rabbi breaks a jar, which makes a lot of noise, so the students get startled, they stop praying, and that gives the angel of death the ability to take his soul at that moment. And the Muslim teacher said, they also have a tradition that when somebody is in, the end of their life, um, and they're in terrific pain, you pray for the healing that will be good for him, meaning that you don't pray, listen, I hope you live longer, get another day of this miserable suffering. God knows in their religious idiom, God knows what is best for me. So I pray that the thing that is best for me, that will really help me, not superficially help me, but help me for real, that's what'll happen. So I was thinking about that when I'm like, I also agree with Barry that I think the words of the tefillah, the words of this piece of liturgy don't, connote to me only good things. But if you want to read it the other way, especially with the second two blessings, it's true that we often experience God's judgments as painful. And, in Nadav and Avihu kind of moments or something like that. and God can be kind of nuclear and kind of violent, and one day God is going to kill each one of us. So, is there a way that that Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha can be read as in that Muslim phrase, I pray that you will have what is best for you. And I hope that you'll be blessed, but sometimes the blessings will also require that little harmonic note of protection from having it go in the wrong direction.
Well, what I'm thinking as you speak, and I'm thinking this is what makes religion work. It because it has to function on so many levels to reach so many different kinds of people at the same time. And uh, you know, absolutely, we could be keyed into all sorts of valences in these words that mean all of these things to us. And then I'm thinking like, okay, so there could be a very simple uh, meaning to this, a simple exercise here in very simple symbolic terms, which is, when it says "V'samu et shemi al bnei Yisrael," I'm thinking of, in antiquity and to a certain extent today also, there's something called, seals. They're palimpsests. They're things that you press on a person or press on wax, and you may leave an impression on them. You seal a letter with that. You seal a document with a seal. Today we use an ink pad and we stamp it, and leave the impression. And in a sense, what I feel reading this is that when I come to receive the blessing, I'm being stamped. I'm receiving that impression, and the stamp on me is nothing other than God's name. What a remarkable thing that is to feel. Of course, God's name is unpronounceable. God's name is invisible as God is. God's name has no form and may not even have a sound, and yet it's it's being impressed on me somewhere, and I get to own it, comport it, portage it, wherever I go. And the placing of God's name is not a one-shot deal, it's a periodic act. That is to say, in my experience, in the life cycle of a Jew, uh, that happens weekly, it happens daily. I mean, we get to this place in the Shemona Esrei every morning, every afternoon, when the Amida is repeated and the blessing is repeated to us. If we were living in Jerusalem, we would actually have the ceremony of that. And there's something quite remarkable about getting imprinted in the metaphorical way on a regular basis. Uh,
I mean, obviously, tefillin works that way. I recently was in Midtown Manhattan and I saw a guy with Yud Hey Vav Hey tattooed on his arm. And tefillin is inscribing in a sort of temporary way or slightly metaphorical way, Shema Yisrael on your body. The Talmud actually has a funny uh, discussion about somebody who is going to go in the mikveh, but they have the name written on their arm. And could you cover that, or being naked in the presence of the name is seen to be impious or something? And so, how could you do it? Could you cover up the name? Is that inappropriate to the name? Um, and with that passage in mind, it seems like tefillin are valenced as a kind of temporary tattoo. That's how I feel about them. I feel in putting on tefillin,
Impressed,
I feel
imprinted.
I feel imprinted. But there's another one for the half of the species that we represent, and that is that Milah is considered, certainly in the Kabbalistic tradition, but even in the non-Kabbalistic rabbinic tradition, it is, Shenikra Shimcha Alav, your name is inscribed upon us. And while that may be freaky or, off-putting perhaps to some of the listeners, I think that is a way that Jews have thought about Milah, that circumcision inscribes the name on the body as well.
So we are, I mean, in the most general sense, then, the Jewish people, as configured here, is a vessel of God's name. And I've said this before here on our show, and I live with this that it places a tremendous amount of responsibility on us that we are walking through the world, kind of holding on to God's name. That the journey of Israel through the desert is really taking the the place of God's name on this journey. The Beit Hamikdash is the literally Baruch haba b'shem Adonai berachnuchem mi beit Adonai. Blessed are you in the name of God. Blessed are you from the house of God. I often think about the parallelism of the name and the house, thinking that the name is the place, the house is the place for the name, and that
So
the name
L'shaken
is radiant
Shemoshem.
exactly, and that's quite literal, actually. I think.
what I would add is that the vessel, what we could take from the priestly blessing here, must be filled by others.
Yeah.
That we cannot fill the vessel ourselves, but we require others, and perhaps that's why the priest blessed the people in the name of God.
Good. Well, this brings us to the end of our time, and blessing is a good way to have this conclusion, because in the way that this is a virtual medium, we're offering blessing to our viewers and listeners. We thank you for spending the time with us as always, and may you have a blessed Shabbat. May the hostages come home. May the light come back to Israel. And may we live in the light of God, in God's blessing. We'll see you next week on the next edition of Parsha Talk. Everyone, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat
Shabbat
Shalom.
Shalom.